happen? Well, this is where Webhooks come into play. The app is handling your order, basically sends a message to another system, which then triggers that notification that you receive all automatically. So this is how it works step by step. So first of all, event occurs, or let's say someone posts a new comment on a blog. So that is the event we are talking about. The first major benefit is again real-time updates without polling. So polling is when one system repeatedly asks another system if there is any new data. So this is inefficient because it wastes time and resources, especially if there is no data to report. Now that we have seen how webhooks are triggered and used in real-world scenarios, let's talk about the structure of the data that webhooks send. This data is called the payload. So when a webhook is triggered, the sending application passes along important information about the event that just occurred. Hey everyone, welcome back to PrepTrain, your go-to channel for learning, growth, and practical tips in the world of backend engineering and beyond. I am Sahib Kumar and I am so excited to have you here today. If you are new to PrepTrain, we help you master the skills you need to excel in your tech career, whether you are a college student, a fresher, or someone looking to level up with your backend development game. We cover everything from coding tutorials to deep dive into industry best practices, all designed to help you learn smarter, not harder. In today's video, we are going to talk about something that powers many of our favorite apps behind the scenes, webhooks. So if you have ever wondered how apps like Instagram, Slack, or Stripe sends you those real-time notification. So webhooks are a key part of magic that makes it happen, whether it's getting an instant message when someone comments on your post or receiving a confirmation email after a purchase. So webhooks basically streamline communication between the apps, making real-time updates possible without the need for constant request. Today we will be covering how webhooks works, why they are so essential to modern app development, and practical steps to implement them in your own projects. Before we get into the details, if you haven't subscribed to PrepTrain yet, now is a great time to do it. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of our future videos. I promise that will help you grow as a backend developer. Also, I would love you to join our growing community on Telegram. This is where we share latest job and internship opportunities, plus more tips like this. You can find the link in the bio of this channel. Let me just bring my deck and then we will continue diving deeper into webhooks. Alright, let's kick things off with an introduction to webhooks. Now, webhooks are a critical concept in backend engineering, enabling different applications to communicate with each other in real time. So what exactly are webhooks? Simply put, they allow apps to send updates automatically when an event occurs without the need for constant manual request. For example, imagine that you just ordered a pizza online and the moment the pizzeria basically starts preparing your order, you get a notification saying that your pizza is being made. How does this happen? Well, this is where webhooks come into play. The app is handling your order, basically sends a message to another system, which then triggers that notification that you receive all automatically. So without you needing to refresh the app or even ask for an update. This automation is one of the biggest advantages of webhooks. This allows system to communicate with each other in real time, keeping everything up to date without the need for constant polling, which when one system keeps asking another, like, is there anything new yet? So we will cover in detail how this works in a moment, but for now, just remember that webhooks are basically what allows apps to communicate efficiently. They are the reason why you get instant notification about important events like your pizza is ready or when someone comments on your Instagram post. So now that you have a basic understanding of what webhooks can do, let's move on to the next slide where we will break down how webhooks basically work in simple terms. Okay, so let's break down webhooks with an everyday example. Imagine that you are waiting for a package to be delivered. Now, instead of constantly calling the delivery service every 10 minutes to ask, is my package here yet? Wouldn't it be more convenient if they just send you a text message the moment your package has arrived? So that exactly is what webhooks do. So instead of your app constantly asking another app, hey, do you have new data for me, which is inefficient and can slow down things, webhooks basically let the other app sends you a notification automatically when something new happens. So the moment your package is delivered, you get that instant notification without any extra effort. This is called event driven communication. It's all about the systems being reactive, meaning they only respond when something noteworthy happens. So in technical terms, the app basically receives the update but does not need to keep polling or manually checking for changes. So instead, it just waits for the webhook to notify it the moment there is a new information. Webhooks are widely used in modern web application because they save time and resources. For the user, it means faster updates and more seamless experience. And for developer, it means less server load and more efficient data communication. Now that we have covered the basic concept of webhooks, let's move on to the next slide where we will be diving into the specific of how webhooks actually work in practice. Okay, now that we understand the concept, let's talk about how webhook work in practice. So in technical terms, a webhook is a way for one application to send real-time data to another application when a specific event happens. So you can think of it as a messenger that brings update automatically without you having to ask for them repeatedly. So this is how it works step by step. So first of all, event occurs, or let's say someone posts a new comment on a blog, so that is the event we are talking about. Something new has occurred, then a webhook get triggered. So the application where the event triggered, in this case the blog, sends a message to another app or service telling it about the event. So this is the webhook doing its job. After that, action is taken. So the receiving app processes the information and it can take some action based on it. For example, it might send you a notification or updates its database with the new comment. So webhooks are often used in apps that require real-time updates. Think about Slack sending you a notification when someone messages you, or phone pay basically confirming that your payment has been successful. These all examples are webhooks in action. The beauty of webhooks is that they only send data when something important happens, which makes them super efficient. Instead of constantly checking for changes, they wait for the change to occur and then send the information instantly. In the next slide, we will make a closer look at the key component that make up a webhook and how they all work together. Now that we have covered the basics of how a webhook works, let's break down the key components that make them function effectively. First, we have the trigger event, and this is the specific action that causes the webhook to be sent. For example, in an online store, a trigger event could be a customer placing a new order, and as soon as that order is placed, the webhook is triggered and the process begins. So it's important to understand that without a trigger event, the webhook remains inactive. It's in all about reacting to changes or updates. Next, we have the endpoint URL. This is the address where receiving app listens for the webhook. Think of it as the destination for message being sent. So when you set up a webhook, you provide the sending items with this URL, which tells it where to send the data. It's like giving someone your phone number so that they can call you when something important happens. Finally, we have the payload. This is the data being sent by the webhook. It usually contains key information about event that has been occurred. And for example, let's say if a new user signs up, the payload might include details like the username, email, address, and the time that they have registered. This payload is typically sent in a structured format, like JSON, which makes it easy for the receiving system to process and understand. Understanding this component is crucial because they form the building blocks of how webhooks operate. Each part plays a vital role in ensuring that the data is sent and received accurately and efficiently. So basically, to summarize, the trigger event starts the process, the endpoint URL is where the data is sent, and the payload is the actual data being transmitted. So in the next slide, we are going to see how these components come together in real application, and we will look at some common use cases for webhooks and how they are actually applied across different industries. Okay, now that we know how webhooks work and what their key components are, let's look at some real-world use cases. Webhooks are widely used in many industries today, especially in situations where real-time updates are crucial. One common use case is in e-commerce when you make a purchase online. This payment gateway, basically let's say Stripe or PayPal, sends a webhook to the store's backend system to confirm that the payment was successful. This triggers a series of actions such as updating the order status, sending a confirmation email to the customer, and preparing the order for the shipment. Without webhooks, stores would have to constantly check for payment updates, which would be inefficient. Another example is in social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, which uses webhooks to provide real-time updates on user interaction. For instance, when someone likes or comments on your post, the platform sends a webhook that triggers a notification on your device. This keeps user engaged and informed about what's happening on their social media accounts without the need of constantly manual checking. Webhooks are also extensively used in CI/CD pipeline. Basically, continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. So in software development, basically, when a developer pushes new code to the repository, let's say GitHub, a webhook can notify a CI server to start running test or deploy the code immediately. This ensures that any change to the code base are automatically handled in real time, making the development process faster and more efficient. So as you can see, webhooks have a wide variety of application, from processing payment in e-commerce to providing real-time notification in social media, and even streamlining software development workflows. So now that we have covered some common use cases, let's move on to the next slide and explore the benefits of using webhooks in your own projects. So let's talk about the key benefits of using webhooks. If you are developing apps or working on a backend system, understanding these advantages will help you see why webhooks are such a powerful tool. The first major benefit is, again, real-time update without polling. So polling is when one system repeatedly asks another system if there is any new data. So this is inefficient because it wastes time and resource, especially if there is no data to report. So with webhooks, you don't need to poll. Instead, the system automatically send updates when it's something important is happening. So this result in faster, more efficient communication between apps. Next, webhooks basically help unnecessary server load. So imagine that your app is polling another server after a few seconds to check for update, even if there is no data. So your server is still making repeated requests, right? So which can slow down performance and increase cost. So webhooks solve this problem by only sending data when necessary. So it reduces the load on both the sending and receiving server. Finally, webhooks are efficient for modern web application because in today's tech world, efficiency is everything. So webhooks allows app to stay updated without wasting bandwidth or processing power. So whether you are running an e-commerce platform or social media app or a software development pipeline, webhooks basically help streamline communication to ensure that everything basically runs smoothly. So to summarize all this, so webhooks basically provide real-time updates without the need of constant polling. They reduce server load and it leads to better performance and lower cost. They are highly efficient and it can be basically easily integrated into modern web application. In the next slide, we will dive into a real-world example of how webhooks are used in payment system, let's say Stripe, showing you exactly how this technology works in practice. So let's take a look at a real-world example. Okay, so especially in a payment system like Stripe. So this will help illustrate the power of webhooks and how they function in a practical setting. So imagine that you are running an online store and a customer has just made a purchase using Stripe as the payment gateway. So here is what is happening. So the customer payment is processed successfully and the event is raised. This is the triggered event, so which sets everything in motion. So webhook gets triggered. So as soon as the basically the payment goes through, Stripe sends a webhook to your store's backend system. So this webhook contains important details about the transaction, such as payment amount, the customer name, and the order ID. After that, action is taken. So basically your store's backend server basically receives the webhook and it processes the data. It then updates the order status to paid, and then it generates an invoice and sends a confirmation email to the customer letting them know that their payment was successful and their order is being processed. So this entire process happens automatically in real time without needing for any manual intervention. Or without webhooks, basically your store would have to constantly check with Stripe to see if any payment had been completed, which is both inefficient and time consuming. This example highlights how webhooks are used to automate critical processes in e-commerce, ensuring that your business can respond quickly and efficiently to customer action. Now that we have seen how webhooks are triggered and used in real world scenarios, let's talk about the structure of the data that webhooks send. This data is called the payload. So when a webhook is triggered, the sending application passes along important information about the event that just occurred. This information is bundled into a payload which is typically sent in JSON format. So JSON is basically JavaScript object notation, and it is a lightweight data format that is easy to understand and work with, especially when dealing with structured data in web application. Let's look at a simple example of a webhook payload. Imagine a new user just made a purchase on an e-commerce platform. So the payload might look like something like this, user gendo action purchase amount $49 or something like this. So here what is this means? So user, so basically this username or ID of the person who performed the action. So in case John Doe, the action is basically this field describes what happened. So in our example, it's a purchase action, right? So for the amount section. So this is the value associated with the action. So in this case, the amount of money that is spent on the purchase. So the payload can carry all sort of useful information depending upon how the webhook is being tracked. And in case of Stripe, this could also be, transaction details like payment amount, customer ID, and timestamp. And in a social media app, basically the payload might include data about new posts or interactions like a comment or a like. So the receiving app basically then uses this data to take action. For example, it might update a database, trigger a notification, or even send an automatic response back to the user. So one of the great things about Webhooks is that payload is fully customizable. So you can configure the sending application to include exactly the data that you need, which makes Webhooks incredibly versatile and powerful in wide range of scenarios. Now that we have covered the payload structure, let's move on to the next slide where we will cover how the receiving app basically handles the webhook and sends a response back to confirm that it has received the data. Alright, so once a basically webhook has been triggered and the payload is sent, so the next step in the process is basically the receiving app should handle the webhook and send back a response. So this is an important part of the process because it ensures that both system, the sender and the receiver, they are in sync. So after the receiving app gets the webhook, it basically needs to confirm that it successfully received and processed the data. Typically, this confirmation comes in form of an HTTP response. The most common response is a simple 200 OK message, which tells the sending app that, hey, I got your message and everything is working fine. Let's think about this in the context of our earlier example with Stripe. So when Stripe sends a webhook to your e-commerce store, your backend system needs to acknowledge that it received the payment information. So if your system successfully processes the payment details like updating the order status or sending a confirmation email, it will send back a 200 OK response to Stripe. This tells Stripe basically that everything went smoothly and no further action is needed. However, what happens if something goes wrong? Maybe your backend system was down or there was an error in processing the data. In that case, the receiving app could send back a different response like 500 internal server error or 404 not found. This tells the sending app that something went wrong and it might trigger a retry mechanism to send the webhook later. It's important to handle the webhook responses properly because they ensure that both systems are aligned. So if the sending app does not receive a valid response, it might assume that the webhook didn't go through and could, either retry sending the data or mark the webhook as failed. So basically, to summarize, the receiving app sends back an HTTP response to confirm the webhook was received. A 200 OK response means everything went well, and other response code like 500 or 404 indicates that there was an issue. Now that basically we have covered how webhook responses work, let's move on to the last slide. So let's take a moment to recap what we have learned about webhooks and why they are such a powerful tool for modern web application. First, we started by defining what webhooks are, and at their core, webhooks basically allows app to communicate with each other in real time by automatically sending data when specific events occur. This eliminates the need for constant polling and makes communication between systems much more efficient. We also discussed the key components of webhooks, the trigger event, start the process, and basically, let's say there is a new order, a payment confirmation, or social media interaction. The endpoint URL is the destination where the data is being sent, like the receiving app mailbox. And the payload is the data that is being transmitted, typically in JSON format. So this carries information about the event. Next, we explored some real world use cases. So webhooks basically are used across industries from e-commerce for payment confirmation or for social media to real-time notification. So they are also essential for CI/CD pipeline where they automate tasks, like running test or deploying code after a new commit. We then covered the benefit of webhooks, including real-time updates without polling and reducing server load and improved efficiency for modern web applications. Finally, we drove into the technical details of how the webhook works, including how the payload is structured and how the receiving app handles the webhook responses by sending back an HTTP status code like 200 to confirm that the process was successful. Webhooks are basically incredibly versatile and they can be used to automate a wide range of tasks in your application, whether you are building an e-commerce, social media app, or a development pipeline. Webhooks can basically help you streamline communication between system and improve efficiency. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end. I hope now you have a solid understanding of what webhooks are and how they can make your apps smarter and more efficient. If you find this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people just like you. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Prep Train and hit the bell icon so that you are always first to know when we release our new content. Your support basically means the world for us, and we have got so much more thing planned, especially if you are into backend engineering. So stay tuned because we will be diving into more advanced topics in the upcoming time. Also, don't forget to join our Prep10 Telegram community for latest job and internship updates and even more learning resources. The link you can find in the bio of this channel. Thanks again, and I will see you in some other video.